doing that and kind of grouping them into themes. Just some expectations for the town hall. Please be respectful of other participants' questions as we go through this forum. Also, if you would please stay on mute unless the person who is talking has the microphone, we will get a lot of feedback. So please stay on mute and put your question in the chat box. A very important thing to remember, hopefully the information you hear today will help you make this decision on whether you are opting in or opting out of the Distance Learning Academy. A very important thing to understand is that you all received a form asking you 2 questions, one about technology and one about the Distance Learning Academy. And those forms are due by 9 o'clock on Sunday. They help inform our decision making. They help us understand transportation and staffing. So it's really, really important that we receive those. Links to the Distance Learning Academy page are going to be in your chat box, as well as that registration form. And I'm sure that Lori Posh will probably refer to this again towards the end. Lori, would you like to take over? Lori Posh?
You know what? I think I have to pop out of present mode. Can you hear me now? So I will do that when I speak. I'll pop in and out of present mode.
Okay.
As Tammy said, I'm Lori Posh. I'm the Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, and I am so thrilled to be with all of you today. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to be with us. I am going to leave my microphone on as I go back into present mode. I won't be able to turn it on and off in between, it looks like. I wanted to go through just a few brief points to draw your attention to a couple of things this morning, but then we want to reserve the majority of the hour for you to ask questions. And as Tammy said, she'll be monitoring that and she'll direct the questions to the appropriate people. Again, our focus today is around the Distance Learning Academy. So we will direct all questions to that today. So I'm going to go back into present mode. Bear with me for just a second. Here it comes. On our district website, and I will show you where that can be found, is a link to our District Learning Academy site. And there is information on that site along with a lot of information about other back to school information. But I wanted to pull out some of the key points that I think might answer some of the questions today. And then again, we'll leave time for more. So this is a comparison of the 2 choices that families have. The one choice is our St. Cloud Area Distance Learning Academy. And the other choice is to remain in what, for lack of better words, we're calling our regular programming. And that programming would be based on the data that we receive from the counties within the St. Cloud School District, as well as guidance by MDE. So we'll be looking at the data and determining if at the time our students should be in person, in a hybrid model, or in a distance learning 2.0. So what that means for us, for students, if your child is in the Distance Learning Academy, it's open to all St. Cloud area school families, just like both models. In the Distance Learning Academy, some of our courses are not guaranteed. And I know that's hard, and it makes it a hard option to not know what those courses are. That's why we're asking for registration information so soon, because we need to be able to see where the numbers are at, and then to be creative with those registration numbers to know how we can offer as many of the courses as we can. Some of them might be a synchronous course, some of them might be with one of our teachers at a different time. So we'll work out all of those details once we see registrations. Enrollment for both options. We need all of our students to have selected their option by 9 o'clock p.m. on August 9th. What does school look like? if your child is in our Distance Learning Academy, school will be all online. It may include students from other schools, so we may have some cross-school teams, but you would remain enrolled in your home school. In the in-person hybrid or Distance Learning 2.0 model, again, that would be based on the data and per the state matrix and MDE guidance. So there may be times when your child is in school. There may be times when your child is both in school and distance learning. And there may be times when they are strictly distance learning. That may vary during the school year depending on what the data, the COVID-19 numbers look like. For instruction, in the Distance Learning Academy, it will be virtual, face-to-face time, so we will have some, we call it synchronous, times when your child is logged in at the same time as the teacher, and there will be times for independent learning. Your child will follow, at the secondary, a regular class schedule for the Distance Learning Academy. It will use the district-approved curriculum that we're using in all of our other classes. And the nice thing about our St. Cloud Area Distance Learning Academy is that it will be taught by our own district teachers. So it will not be an online platform with teachers from around the state or nation. It's with our own teachers. And in the other model, again, it's dependent on the model that we're in. There will be face-to-face instruction, but it might be virtually or it might be in person, depending on the model. And again, that also uses our district-approved curriculum. And then technology, we are thrilled to let everybody know that all students in our district will receive a device to use during the year. We also have some hotspots that will be available for families who have internet connection issues. At the elementary, Seesaw will be the common platform, and at the secondary schools, it will be Schoology. I'm going to hop out real quickly and show you where to find this on the website. So going back to our, oh, you know what? I'm going to go into a different link real quickly here. Let's try this again. I hopped into the link on the website to join the meeting and then forgot to go back to the main page. So let's go back to that main page. So when you come to our website, isd742.org, you'll see that the main header is our 742 Back to School. And when you click on the More, it will take you to all of our information about our back to school plans. I know that these decisions are not easy for families and they're not easy for any of us in the district either, for administrators or for teachers. So I appreciate everybody's willingness and patience to work through this together. On the left side, you see a link for District Learning Academy. That has a description about the Distance Learning Academy, a more in-depth chart than what I showed you. And on here is also the link for families to register. We do ask again that all families register for either option so that we can make sure we have your accurate information. There also is an FAQ link over here that has the answers to many, many of the questions that we've been receiving. So I am going to unshare, and I will turn it over to Tammy to moderate the questions.
Okay, Lori Posch, we'll keep going with you a little bit with some of the more general questions about the Distance Learning Academy. One question is, will there be licensed teachers teaching in the Distance Learning Academy?
Yes, we will continue to follow all of the state requirements for that. So all of our classes will be taught by licensed teachers. We will have some paraprofessionals helping to support in whichever model we're in, but all of the courses will be taught by our district licensed teachers.
Thank you. And I know you just went through that comparison chart, but a couple of questions came back again. Distance Learning 2.0, is that an option? And why weren't parents surveyed about Distance 2.0 being an option?
That actually is not a separate option. So elementary families received a separate survey because where our data was right now, the state was saying that elementary students could all be back in person. Districts have the option to go with something that's more restrictive. So we really wanted to gather from our elementary parents feedback about how comfortable they were with either coming back in person or a hybrid model. So the model, the in-district or in-person, hybrid, and distance learning 2.0 are all district decisions for all students based on the data that we receive in MDE support.
And this may be for you or for all of you. It's a frequently asked question. Why does the Distance Learning Academy need to be a year-long commitment? And are there any exceptions?
Okay, I will take it. And then Marcia and Lori, if you have something to add. We need to base our staffing off of enrollment, and we want the options to be as consistent for our staff and for our students as we can throughout the year. So it is part of the planning that has to take place. We need to let our teachers know. We also, if we're in a hybrid model, we have to make sure that we're watching that 50% capacity limit in our buildings and on our buses. So the information, the registration information helps us ensure that we're at that 50% capacity. We do know that there might be some individual situations that come up. And at the end of each trimester, if you have a unique situation that has come up, you could apply and request that you move between the models. That again cannot be guaranteed based on enrollment and staffing, but it would be reviewed by our assistant superintendents.
Okay, another question specific to how Distance Learning Academy looks. Would there be live time during the Distance Learning Academy option? And if so, how much live time is there?
And I apologize, I just realized I had my camera turned off while I was presenting. You know, again, that all depends on where the registration numbers are and what the teachers are doing at the time. So there will be live time for every student in every class. Depending on the projects, that will make the difference between if a teacher goes online synchronously or does some video recordings for teachers or for students to watch. But there will be face-to-face time with teachers throughout the distance learning period, whether it's in the academy, the hybrid, or distance learning 2.0.
Marcia, there's a question in the chat regarding elementary teachers, and will they be consistent for Distance Learning Academy?
The goal would be for staff to be consistent. We would not want to be moving staff around, much like we don't in the school year, unless there are circumstances that arise with staff and if a situation arises where we need to change staff because of personal circumstances. But for the most part, we want to keep staff consistent in the Distance Learning Academy.
Lori Putnam, a question for you regarding Distance Learning Academy is, what will AP course offerings look like?
That's something that we are still working on because we need to know which students are choosing to sign up for our Distance Learning Academy. And I understand the concern or the frustration from families saying, how are we going to make a choice when we don't know what courses are offered? And we're saying we need to know what students are there to know which courses they wanted to be able to know which courses to offer. So I do understand that it feels and is a cyclical process. So what I can tell you is that we will, once our families register, we will do our very best to ensure that the courses that our students asked for, they're able to get some or all. Certainly we know that we cannot provide the entire high school course catalog in both our brick and mortar schools and our distance learning academies. But we are looking at ways to ensure that there is some of that extension and certainly the support for all of our students. Might it mean that there has to be some flexibility in terms of if a student typically takes AP US History in 11th and AP Government in 12th, could a junior have to take AP Government and just do that kind of flexibility in terms of schedule? Absolutely. But we will do our best to provide the differentiation. I saw that question for elementary as well, so that our students are able to get their needs met. Unfortunately, I can't say exactly which classes that will be at this time.
And would that be a similar answer then for advanced courses like advanced LA in the middle schools?
Yes, that would be a very similar answer. Thank you. And also for math, we know that some of our students are grade accelerated in math at the middle school and then into the high school, but we would still be providing that opportunity for that grade level acceleration as well.
Thank you. Marcia, this one is for you. Will the Distance Learning Academy be all online, or will a first grader, for example, be able to use workbooks and a book and paper?
So I'm going to answer that and then defer to Lori Posh if I'm not doing that accurately. We anticipate that students will be having paper pencil activities as well as online activities and be able to supply, for example, math workbooks and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Another question, and this may be a Lori Posh one. Will the DLA, I like that, let's just start using that little abbreviation. Will the DLA courses look like and follow courses that are being provided in our, let's say we're in the hybrid model. So the example would be, will the biology course in the DLA be the same course as is going on in the hybrid model?
Easy answer, yes. No matter which model we're in, our teachers still follow all of the standards and use our district curriculum. So the same information will be taught and covered no matter which model or which program you're in.
This one's probably Marcia and Lori Posh. What will reading instruction look like in the first grade, and questions about the access to materials?
I can start and then Marcia can add in if you'd like. You know, reading instruction, especially at those early ages, those foundational times are so important. And that honestly was part of the reason that we decided we needed to bring our K1 and 2 students back more often at the beginning of the year. We recognize the importance of really building those strong relationships with all of our students, but that need to get our K1, 2 students really involved in routines of learning. And that includes our reading instruction. So reading instruction for our earliest learners will take place if they're in school on Monday through Thursday, with some practice activities and things on Friday, and some small group guided practice and things on Fridays as well. With first grade, we will be adding a strong phonics component, a stronger phonics component this year to really build those foundational skills. So in either program, reading instruction will take place. We actually, in our hybrid model, on the days that our students are in school, are really focusing on reading and math instruction while not forgetting about any of the other content areas.
Thank you. This question is about immersion. Is immersion program only offered through District Learning Academy?
It is not. Our immersion program has the same 2 options. And I just want to say a thank you to our immersion parents who completed a quick turnaround survey for us to see interest in that. So we will have both the regular offering and the Distance Learning Academy option for our immersion families as well. In an email that I sent out to our immersion families, we will need to look at that based on numbers and may have to do some multi-age classrooms at both levels. But the families that I have talked to over the last couple of days from immersion are so excited about the prospect of multi-age options because they feel that their students can really grow whatever grade they're at by supporting their peers. So that has actually turned into a big benefit for many of the families.
There is a question about the platforms we use and if it's possible for a secondary student to use Seesaw.
Our learning and teaching platform for grades 6 through 12 is Schoology, and we've been working on that for about 5 years, so we would not be crossing models at this point.
I don't think, is there anyone from district staff who is special education on the call?
I just reached out to Executive Director Potter.
Okay.
Because I know that there are some questions happening. I know that she was tied up this morning and had wanted to be here. I asked if she could possibly get away, and if not, I've asked some of the questions to be able to provide those answers.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Real quickly, do we know yet, Lori Posch, when the district or the Distance Learning Academy schedule will be posted?
And I think I saw Lori answer that up earlier in the chat. We are anticipating that happens within the next couple of weeks. Our counselors will be coming in and working countless hours to redo everybody's schedules to make that fit. So that's why we really need this information back as soon as possible so that our counselors can get to work determining those schedules. But we do know that whether you're in a Distance Learning Academy or in person or in the hybrid model, that all students will follow at this time the same course schedules.
Thank you. And this is a good one. What options are available within DLA for children to socialize with each other?
That was something that we took really seriously in the feedback that we got from our teachers, from our students, and from our parents was that need for the interactions. And that's why this year we've added in the times to be synchronous, to be together in person as a class. So our teachers will be planning activities and times when our students can interact with each other. They can interact in some small groups. But we know that that is of high importance. So it's something that our teachers will be planning into all lessons throughout the week.
And I would like to add, I know that there have been some questions about, why did we choose this model instead of just live streaming? One of the reasons we chose to have a separate Distance Learning Academy is for that very purpose, is to build community. That truly this is a school, and yes, students are not and teachers are not walking through a brick and mortar door, but they are still a learning community. And it's through the consistent teachers, the consistent classmates, the online interactions and community building that will make it that. And so that's a very intentional element of our Distance Learning Academy.
And Lori Putnam, while you have the mic, could you take the questions regarding activities in DLA?
Absolutely. If our students are selecting the Distance Learning Academy and are able to come to our schools for any of the activities that we're able to offer, then they are absolutely welcome. We know that some of our families have to choose Distance Learning Academy because of health conditions that prevent them from actually being able to be in groups. And while our activities and our sports will be potted and we'll use all of the social distancing and health measures possible, we understand that those present some health risks for medically fragile students or families. But for those who are able to join us, we welcome them absolutely. I know that we are looking at some online options for things like Knowledge Bowl or GSA or our creative literary groups that meet after school. There are activities that students will be able to join regardless of whether they're able to come in person or virtually, and all of our students would be welcome to attend those.
Thank you. I believe I saw a question about grading. What will grading look like?
At the elementary level, grading will grading will be a meets or does not meet. So teachers will grade according to the standards, and a child will either meet the standard or get a D for does not meet the standard. And if during a grading period a standard is not assessed, then the report card will show an NA for not assessed.
And at the secondary, it will look very much like the spring, where our students and families are able to choose A through D, no credit, or pass no credit. The change will be that families will actually be able to see their child's final grade before making the decision. We know that that's an important element, and we'll be implementing that through the year. And that's actually something our teachers asked for as well, is they want our students and families to have full information prior to making the choice.
I want to take just a moment to recognize that other questions are coming into the chat. If you're asking questions about the hybrid model or the in-person model, we will be addressing those in a separate forum. Also in the chat, you will find a link to the back to school guide. You will find a link to the district Distance Learning Academy, as well as the registration form that is due on the 9th. So I didn't want you to think I'm ignoring those questions. This is a recorded session. We will have a record of all those questions and make sure that if you don't find those answers online, we'll get those questions answered for you.
I did hear back from Carol Potter, and she is fully committed, and as we knew that she would probably not be able to join us. She did let me know, however, that our case managers most likely will not necessarily be able to remain the same. If our case managers have a full load, either in Distance Learning Academy or in the brick and mortar schools, that they probably will not cross over, much like the rest of our staff.
There's a question that may need clarification. The question is, what happens if a class that I originally signed up for in Distance Learning Academy is no longer offered?
If that would happen, we would ask your child to be in contact with the counselor at that school to look at what other options the child would like to register for.
Do you want to talk about synchronous and asynchronous a little bit?
Yes. Is a more specific question, or?
The question is, lost it, here it is. Will students have an opportunity to complete work in an asynchronous manner?
Absolutely. We know that all of our students need that time to complete work. So the synchronous time in any option, whether it's the hybrid model, Distance Learning 2.0, or Distance Learning Academy, would allow time for students to complete their work. There will be very few days when the entire class period is synchronous. We know that we don't want our students sitting on a screen for 6 or 7 hours a day. So we'll go back and forth between synchronous and asynchronous depending on the lesson the teacher has for that day.
A little bit more clarification is being asked for, this was specifically Chinese immersion, but it would be true for either of our immersion programs. Do you have anything else at this time that can be said about the multi-generational classes?
We don't know yet which grades we would offer as a multi-age. That will be dependent on registration numbers and on our teachers. So we will need to look at the numbers, see how many people have opted for each grade level, and where those best cross grade level options could be offered or would be offered.
A question about if there will be standards and expectations on how teachers use the learning platforms, how they post their assignments, do collection of homework, and so forth. Any one of you can jump on that one.
Yes, absolutely. Whether in our Distance Learning Academy or in our, sorry, I'm going to admit somebody else, or in our hybrid learning model, we will have a very consistent structure for Schoology courses. Our learning and teaching team has done a beautiful job laying out those expectations for our staff. And it was interesting, our staff, our families, and our students all asked for that. The other thing that will be consistent is the use of the calendar for assignments at the secondary and workflow. This is how work gets submitted. This is how families know what's due. So it'll be far more consistent, while still understanding that their teachers want some of that ability to do the art of it, of teaching and instructing, but the basic structures will absolutely be consistent.
And the same applies for elementary and the Seesaw platform. So expectations will be that assignments and there's actually a structure that's been outlined and that will be shared with staff at the beginning of the school year, because we do want there to be consistent use in how teachers share assignments and deliver instruction through the Seesaw learning platform.
Okay, Lori Posch, I believe there is a question about music and how that might look.
I am seeing quite a few questions pop up. Those are all great questions because we know the value of our fine arts in our students' lives, and we want to make sure that we can provide as many of those opportunities for our students as we can. There is some state guidance that's out there around our music classes and a little bit coming out now about our Phy-Ed classes. So in music, the guidance says that students may remove masks when they're singing or playing an instrument as long as they can be social distanced. So our hope is that we may be able to, even if somebody chooses a distance learning academy model, that we may be able to schedule it where parents could bring the child into school for those classes. Again, that is all in the process of being looked at and following that strict guidance that comes out from the state. I also have a meeting coming up in, I think it's the next week and a half, where I've asked our music teachers to join to provide their feedback because they know best about the size of their room, the capacity of the room, and the cleaning that needs to go into the room during those courses. Phy-Ed is the same way. Our Phy-Ed teachers right now are hoping that they can be outside as much as possible. And when they do need to be inside, they will be following the strict cleaning guidelines in the gym and for the equipment that they're using. So we are following all of those strict guidelines, but we want to make sure that we're offering as much as we can in those areas for our students.
Thank you. Lori Putnam, a question about S2S classes and how that might look.
In terms of S2S, most likely, those are very similar to our AP courses, right? It will have to depend on who chooses Distance Learning Academy, which courses they enroll in. Most likely, if students are taking S2S, though, they potentially also qualify for PSEO, and we could partner with St. Cloud Community Technical College. They've been incredible partners to us and always wanting to educate our students in partnership with us, or St. Cloud State would be another great option. Certainly, we want to keep our students in our district and in our classrooms, but we also know that we're not in a position of limiting students' access to challenge and other opportunities.
Lori Posch, this maybe is a piggyback on what you just talked about with music. The question is, what if there's a different course that's not offered in Distance Learning Academy? Then can the student come to school in person? I
think we would need to look at those on a case-by-case basis. Again, it depends on the numbers. We know that we have to keep our buildings and our buses at 50% capacity. So we need to make sure that having students come in for some of those courses would not put us over that capacity. So again, that's dependent on enrollment numbers.
A question about how distance learning looks differently than it did in the spring. Have teachers received professional development? What improvements have been made?
I go back to some of the feedback that we received from our parents, our students, and our teachers. We have looked so carefully at that data and all of the comments that have come in. And I just want to say publicly how proud I am of our teachers last year. They completely turned around an education system with less than 2 weeks warning to do that. And throughout the spring, we're monitoring and adjusting as they went along. We know that we learned a lot of lessons, as did schools across this nation and world. And we will be better. You know, some of the things that we have put in place for next year, the mix of synchronous and asynchronous, will only make the instruction even better than it was. Yes, they will be receiving professional development. So we had many options available for teachers to participate in the spring and in the summer. I know that Gary's on this call, and the technology team provided many tutorials about how to better use tools, the technology tools for instruction. Those will continue and will expand. So as teachers come back to work the end of August, we have professional development planned for them again, as well as learning from each other. We have a remarkable wealth of knowledge in our teaching staff, and they are always willing to share with each other to get better.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions in the chat regarding assessments and how those will be conducted through DLA. I don't think Dr. Huff's on the call this morning. That may be one that we will need to, as I said, we'll be collecting all the questions and get back to you on, unless one of you want to address it. Okay, we'll return to the assessment question and what that looks like for DLA. Another question, yes.
I'm sorry, may I interrupt real quick? I know somebody had asked that they'd like to see a sample schedule. So I have a sample of a high school schedule that I linked. I dropped into the chat box. There's a link. Hopefully I get the view rights accurate. If not, somebody can let me know, but that would be, a middle school would be fairly similar to what the high school has. Middle school just has advisory pulled out as a separate 20 minutes. High school has the same 20 minutes just embedded into the first, or I believe third hours or fourth hours. We do have principals on, though, if there are questions about that. Thank you.
Will there be school counselors and mental health professionals available to students in DLA? That looks like it's absolutely.
I see all of us nodding our heads, but yes, our students will be provided the same services no matter which option they select.
And yes, that I see in there the questions about the schedule. That is absolutely the brick and mortar schedule. Our Distance Learning Academy schedule, as we said, has not been put out. Most likely it will follow the level schedule. So middle school would follow middle school, high school follow high school. The only reason I'm hedging a little bit is that we also know that some of our students and families have a challenge being online and supporting one another between the typical hours of 9 and 4, say, for families who work split shifts, who work overnight, for our students, our secondary students who are working to support themselves or their families. We would like to be able to offer some flexibility. So when you hear me say our schedules will be out in a couple of weeks, it's because we're still exploring what that could potentially look like, so that we are ensuring that we're meeting the needs of all of our students and families. But for now, I think most families can assume that that the typical hours and the schedule would look very similar to what our brick and mortar schools are doing.
Lori Posh, a couple of questions regarding talent development and enrichment. What would that look like in DLA?
I'm glad you asked that because, and I saw a question earlier about the grading piece connected with that as well. Our teachers, the expectation is that our teachers are really providing activities that meet the range of the students that they have. And that includes our learners who are in that enrichment and talent development program, as well as our high potential programs. So we have at this point not changed any of our programming in terms of the offerings for that. Again, we will need to look a little bit at some of our secondary with where the courses land. At elementary, we will still be providing enrichment for all of our students, as well as enrichment for the small groups. It may look a little different than it has in the past, but it will be offered.
This is a specific immersion question, but I think it probably applies to DLA in all areas. And the question is, how much parent involvement is expected? This question was specific to Spanish immersion, and will teachers be expected, or excuse me, parents be expected to be more hands-on teaching or supervising?
I know that last year I was doing a radio interview and a question like that came up, and my answer was teachers are the teachers and parents are the parents. But any of us who have had children know that there are times where we have to lend some assistance, and this will be no different. Our hope and our goal is that the instruction can be all delivered by our teachers. What we need you to do as parents is to provide them the support to be able to be an active participant in their instruction. So as much as possible, and we know it's not possible in all areas, but if you can provide that learning environment, whether it's just a place where they can safely keep their device or a quiet time when they could log on and do their work, that's what our expectation is for parents. If it gets to the point where you feel like you are having to do too much help or support, we would really encourage you to reach out to your child's teacher, because that is never the goal, that our parents are having to do that instruction piece.
At this point, I've got 10:46 on the time clock and we're wrapping at 11. There are still parents in the chat box that are saying, how do I make this decision if I really don't know how hybrid is going to look and operate? So with all of your permission, Lori, Marcia, could we take just a few minutes here at the end to talk about what the hybrid model is going to look like? And I see Lori Putnam nodding her head, so we're going to start with you.
Okay, and I'm not sure what families are looking for specifically, so if I'm off base, you can redirect me in the chat. And then it also, I suggest people also take a look at those FAQs. That might be helpful as well. For our hybrid model, we'll be running 3 periods a day at the secondary. Classes will be about 112 minutes, as you can see from the sample schedule. There will be advisory every day, and then there'll be a time for connection for both our students to students and our students to staff. It'll be a time to go visit with counselors, chemical health support for our juniors, seniors who are looking at taking the next step into college, a time to visit our career and college center. And then our teachers, so then they see their teachers once in person, once every 4 days. So they do probably 1, 2, 3, periods 1, 2, 3 on Monday, 4, 5, 6 on Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday. All of our learning and teaching happens in Schoology. So whether students are at home or whether they're in person with a teacher, they know that all of their assignments, their instruction, even collaborating with their peers happens in that learning and teaching platform. The in-person time will be used to support students, again, for in-person collaboration. to get those questions answered one-to-one. Our goal was to provide a consistent way for students to know where to go to get that instruction. We know that a student could potentially be quarantined for up to 14 days. A staff could be quarantined. A class could be quarantined. Just based on community health and transmission rates. So by having everything in Schoology, a student doesn't miss out on any of their learning, even if those unfortunate instances were to happen. Our students would eat in the cafeteria, socially distanced. That means we'll probably be using some other spaces aside from the cafeteria. All of our students would be screened for symptoms on their way in. And then if students or staff are exhibiting any symptoms during the day, we do have an isolation room that we call our care room that would provide a safe space for our students to go during the day. And then our release times would be staggered. Hopefully that is helpful. I see some questions about distance learning 2.0. Distance learning 2.0 versus the distance learning academy. The distance learning 2.0 at secondary is when the governor says, because of community health data, that we have to go into distance learning because of the transmission rates in our community. Again, that is set by the governor and the state. That is not a decision that the district makes or that Superintendent Jett makes. The governor says, okay, at 10 cases for secondary now, in terms of the community health spread, now you're in distance learning 2.0. And the beautiful thing about keeping all of our learning and teaching in Schoology is that that's an easy transition for our students. They're still learning and teaching the same way. They're online with their teachers at the start of every period. That's how attendance is taken. So even when they're home on their non-in-person days or distance learning 2.0, they still have to follow their same schedule, be online. It does not mean that they will be online all day. We know that that's a really challenging thing for adults. If you guys have been in Zooms all day, you know how challenging that can be. But it does mean that everyone is online at the same time, and then the teacher would provide direction on what's needed. It could be that they go into breakout rooms to collaborate on group work. It could be they go do some independent practice for 45 minutes and come back at the end of the period. That will be a decision that the teacher makes based on what students need. That was quick, but I want to make sure that elementary has some time to get their perspective in.
Marcia?
Yes, I am ready. So as was shared at the board meeting the other night on Wednesday, and per the safe learning goals of MDE, we are to prioritize in-person learning for our young learners. And so therefore, as you know, we are bringing back K2 learners to school in person at 50% capacity. So that means that, we take a class size and we divide it in half. We have had a space study done, space capacity study done in all of our elementary buildings. And we know at what capacity we can fill a room in order to provide safe distancing in those classrooms. And so that's how we'll determine how many students can be in a classroom and keep everyone at a safe distance for learning. So that will be our K2 students. And while the 3rd and 5th grade students are in school, they'll be on an every other day schedule. And everyone K through 5 will have Flex Fridays, and that will be an at-home learning day. While students are in school for the hybrid in-person days, there will be extended instruction in reading and math on those in-person days. And there will also be time allocated to prepare for and process the at-home learning. While they're in school, there will be interactive and collaborative activities that can be done safely, and time for differentiation. On those hybrid at-home days, there will be brief synchronous connections so that students and teachers will have time to connect. We will provide predictable repeated structures for students. There will be better district level support so that at-home learning looks very similar to in-school learning. We want to move away from isolated, disconnected activities to a really structured home learning framework, providing independent reading and writing activities, math activities, like I mentioned earlier. Our plan is to send math workbooks home, and also provide literacy performance tasks or projects. And so students will receive directions from their teachers for at-home activities in CSA, but while they're on those in-person days in school, part of that, the time each day will be set aside to really prepare students for those at-home learning days. And as I mentioned again, then on those Friday flex days, there will be some time for synchronous activities such as morning meeting, and also a time to focus on and celebrate learning with students. We also want to have an opportunity to do some small group instruction on those Flex Fridays, and then have asynchronous time for music, phyed, and art, so that they can get some extra time in those areas. They'll also have time for music, phyed, and art while they're in school, but we want to ensure that they have time for it while they're at home learning.
Marcia, I think one confusion is the K2 piece. So could you answer, if K2 returns 4 days a week, is that also the same as hybrid? Are those safety protocols the same?
Absolutely. So for students in K2 that are attending school 4 days a week, those classrooms will be at 50% capacity. So we are, as I said, a space study has been done, and we are ensuring that the classrooms will be set up and arranged in such a way that we are practicing safe distancing. It's also our goal to keep students in pods or in core groups and not have a lot of movement throughout the day, and not a lot of interaction by other students throughout the day. We do plan to have recess, but again, we will ensure that there's not a lot of children outside for recess. We will be creating a schedule that allows for a limited group of students outside for recess, because we know that having that time to be active, especially for little bodies, is really, really important.
I'm gonna give us a warning on time here. Lori Posh, you might want to take this one, and then others could chime in. A specific question about English language learner supports.
Thanks. And I saw earlier a question about how we're communicating with our multilingual families as well. So as mentioned before, all services will be available for all students, no matter which model they're in. So we will have at least one, maybe more, of our EL teachers assigned to our Distance Learning Academy. We also are looking at ways that we can provide some additional support to really wrap around our families to make sure that we're communicating clearly. We have worked real closely with Kelly Frankenfield, who is our Director of Multilingual Programming, and with Ellen Stewart, who is our Director of Equity. All of our EL families should have or will be receiving a personal phone call to go through questions, answer questions. I know that Dr. Putnam and Superintendent Jett were on one of the local Somali organizations, or was it radio station or TV, Lori? One of the two.
It was TV. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. And we also have been working real closely with leaders in the Latinx community to make sure that they're helping to share the information as well. So trying to get that information out, even through personal calls, as often and as frequently as we can.
And I'd like to give you each a quick chance at a summary statement, but I think there's one more important question that should be answered, and that's, how will attendance be handled in DLA?
I'm going to jump in for secondary, at least. They would be required to log in and follow their schedule. We know that consistency and routine is important at our secondary level. Our students need that structure. At least if you're sitting in my household in the spring, it was very evident that our teenagers need that structure. So that's what will be expected. And they'll need to be on time. we still need to teach students to be on time. So they've got, just like the tardy policy in our brick and mortar schools, they've got 10 minutes and then they're counted tardy.
And for elementary students, students will be required to, as much as possible, be in attendance during those synchronous times. And we know that, I saw a question in the chat about what if it's not possible. We're working through that. We're determining whether or not we'll be recording sessions and so on, so that children and families can view those sessions later, and then do the assignment. And assignments will be posted so that children can do those assignments, and that will be the way that they will be counted in attendance.
Thank you. Any summary statements? Lloyd Posh?
I would just like to say again that we recognize what a hard decision this is for some of our families, whether it be for health reasons or for personal reasons outside of health reasons. So we do know that this is a difficult decision, and know that we have tried to take all of those feedback pieces that we've received, as well as the things that we don't know, into consideration. We're meeting frequently with our healthcare providers as well. So as you make these decisions, please know that we have, we wish that we could offer everything to every student in every individualized way, but that we have taken into consideration every piece of feedback and every student that our teachers have shared information about very, very seriously as we made this plan.
I'd just like to say, I know that we may not have gotten to every single question, and I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I sent my email. I will also drop my cell in there. If you have questions, you can certainly call or text. We know that this is a time-sensitive decision.
And I will do the same. Before we log off here, I'll put my email address as well as my cell number. And again, thank you for taking time to be with us this morning. I know this is a hard decision, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate your working through all of these plans with us as we prepare for the start of school in the fall.
I see a question about specific to Immersion District Learning Academy questions. I will also put my email in. Immersion questions should come to me.
And just a reminder, we do have, if you've not already filled it out, we do have the form that's due tomorrow night at 9 o'clock in the chat. The link is in the chat. You may also find it on the website. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Yes, Lori.
Before people go, I'd just like to acknowledge that Superintendent Jett was on the call with us, and he was able to be here to hear your concerns and your questions. And so I wanted to thank Superintendent Jett for joining us this morning.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.